What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This here is Legitical Response. We cover political news. We keep you up to date and keep you informed on everything that the government does, especially everything that Congress does. And if it was not for Congress, we currently would not have loads of information about the censorship industrial complex. Now, if you don't know what that is, okay, ever since COVID, we learned about this. These social media platforms, right? Okay, let me back up. The White House, the FBI, pretty much the federal government had backdoor access and were in contact with social media platforms, going through individual people's posts and whatnot, and recommending to the social media platforms that, hey, we don't like what this person said. Shut this person down. Delete this post. Ban them outright. Turn their distribution all the way down. If you could do that for me, I would really appreciate it. And guess what? The social media platforms went ahead and obliged them in doing so. And now they're trying to come out and say, oh no, that's just government expressing their First Amendment rights. No, I'm sorry. That's not how it works. Check this out, y'all.
Yields back, and now I recognize Representative Crane from the great state of Arizona for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the hearing today. I want to start with you, Ms. Franks. I believe you said the government has the right to participate in expressing its viewpoint. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't, respectfully, Ms. Franks, I don't think that's what we're really talking about here today. We're not talking about the government expressing its viewpoints. What we're really talking about is when the government pays and uses taxpayer dollars to fund these entities that we're talking about here today that actually discredit some of these news sites and drives away their advertisers. Do you think that's fair as well?
What is fair is for the government to be able to fund projects and organizations that do certain things with those funds that may include competing in the marketplace of ideas, and they may be winning in the marketplace of ideas, but the government is not making those choices. And when certain news outlets lose in the marketplace of ideas, they may want to blame the government for that, but maybe they're just losers.
So, okay, Ms. Franks, do you think...
It's actually Dr. Franks.
What's that?
It's actually Dr. Franks.
Okay, Dr. Franks, sorry. Ms. Jonas here said that when she was looking at these entities and the organizations that they had blacklisted, every single one of them was a conservative-leaning organization. Do you think that's fair as well? Is that okay? Dr. Franks?
Use a different name, so I wasn't sure you were talking to me.
Yeah, I'm still talking to you. I'm still looking at you. I'm still talking to you.
Would you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, you seem to have a problem paying attention to the questions being asked of you today. I'll repeat it for you again. Do you think that it's okay that these entities that are blacklisting companies, all of the companies on the list that are blacklisted are conservative outlets?
Do I think that it is okay for a company, for a nonprofit organization to develop tools that offer rankings? In other words, offer speech of criticism, critical speech about certain businesses? Yes, I think that's okay because that is protected First Amendment activity.
So you think it's okay for the federal government to be using our tax dollars to basically, through a proxy, blacklist one side of the aisle? You think that's okay?
I do not, because that is not what is happening.
Really? How so?
Yes.
Then why are all the companies on the list, the blacklist, conservative groups?
I think that's something that conservatives would need to answer.
This, to me, is just utter corruption. When the government that, oh, we don't like what they're saying, so we're going to de-rank these people. We're going to say, oh, well, that's misinformation according to us. We don't like it, so we're going to shut it down. We're going to say that, oh, well, we're going to tell anybody and everybody not to listen to these certain news outlets because they're conservative, because they give a conservative viewpoint on certain issues. We're going to go in and say, these places suck. Now, I'm sorry, that's not the government's position to do that. That is totally unfair. And maybe you need to ask the conservatives, do you see what we're getting from the Biden administration here, right? If you don't parrot their talking points, if you don't toe the line for the Democrat Party, then you get deranked, you get just kicked out. Right? You can't report on news. You can't report on facts from your perspective. You can't do none of that. Yeah, That's what these companies are doing. That's what they're doing to channels like mine. They derank them, turn their reach down so they can't reach as many people. And they do have the ability to do this, and they do it on a constant basis. And I think it's very unfair. Why don't you let it grow naturally? Why does the government have to step in, pay these organizations to actually rank certain news organizations, right? NewsGuard is one of these people that they're constantly, if you go look at NewsGuard, every single conservative outlet is ranked way lower than any liberal news outlet. And we know that the corporate press is what I mean by liberal news. They constantly lie, but they don't get deranked for their constant lies that they put out. But conservative outlets get deranked for reporting on the facts, right? Reporting on COVID is where a lot of this came in. A lot of these people, they got strikes for quote-unquote misinformation that turned out later to be correct information. But did it get fixed with NewsGuard and all these other places that rank these certain outlets? No, it didn't get fixed. They didn't raise their rate back up because they actually told the truth. All it was misinformation at the time. So we're not going to fix that because it was wrong at the time. It wasn't wrong. I'm sorry. You can't do that. The government's stepping in and shutting voices down because it's the opposition. It's what we don't want. We don't want this information getting out there. They want you to be lied to. They want sheep to be obedient. They want you to be very obedient. They want you to take their talking points and their opinions and their views and just run with that and say, this is the facts, quote unquote facts, and you should think this way instead of thinking a totally different way, or allow people to think however the hell they want to think, right? Because once we get the facts, we base our opinions on that. People have a general proclivity for bias, like whichever way they lean, they're going to take the facts and skew it in a certain way. But if you give out just the facts, it's really hard to bias that any certain way or whatever. But that doesn't stop the government from coming in and trying to push you in a certain direction on how to think. And I think that's very wrong. And I think them using the excuse that it's the government's First Amendment right to do this is just totally unethical. Very, very unethical. And they should be reprimanded for doing so. But they're not being reprimanded for doing so. And they're still doing it till this day.
No, I think that's something you need to answer. Because we're talking about censorship here, and there's only one group of people being censored.
No one is being censored.
Miss Eunice here admitted that she's not even a Republican. She leans left. Yet she's telling us that all of the companies on the blacklist are conservative groups. How do you square that, doctor?
I don't have to square that because, as I said, the focus
I know, because you don't have to make any sense, do you?
May I answer the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right.
The First Amendment has certain principles and certain rules. People may not like them. People may disagree with them. People may not like the fact that someone out there may say conservatives are all bad or liberals are all bad. The correct response to not liking that is to engage in your own speech, as is often happening here. It is not to say, oh, this is censorship, we're being silenced. It's simply to say, we disagree with what's being said here. Try to compete, and if you are good enough, maybe you'll win.
Miss Eunice, what do you have to say about what Dr. Franks just said?
First of all, I want to be I want to be clear that this wasn't just about NewsGuard and GDI. The government was funding hundreds, at least 300 tools and technologies that were designed to censor speech. Some of them weren't even pretending to censor foreign disinformation, quote unquote disinformation. Of course, that's a subjective term. So they were hosting COVID disinformation challenges where they were giving grants to companies who showed that they were the best at censoring COVID disinformation. COVID is not really a national security or foreign topic, even if it has some tinges of that. So this was about the government using its authority. The government can't use its authority, can't use its power, and can't use its money in order to censor views it doesn't like. It's the government, yes, it has a right to censor. To express its own views, but not to use those views to censor. That's where it stops. And the court expressly said that in Vulo recently, actually.
Mr. Weingarten, I'm going to allow you to comment on this exchange.
I'd just say briefly, we've heard a robust defense of the government's purported right to speak, which, as we've established, really looks like a right to censor. And the censors portrayed as the victims here, but American speech en masse has been censored by this censorship industrial complex on a slew of issues that expressly reflect protected political speech. And if a stop isn't put to it, we're going to lose this right in toto.
He's totally correct in that. If we do not hold the government to account, if we do not stop them from censoring Americans, conservative news outlets, all this other stuff, just American people in general, they're going to continue to do it, and they're going to get more and more emboldened with their censorship, right? Like now it's just deranking people and turning their distribution down, stuff like that. So, you know, and in certain instances, banning people outright for quote unquote misinformation, and they get to determine what is mis and disinformation. Which is totally wrong. The facts get to determine what is mis and disinformation. And we have found time and time again that a lot of that around COVID was not misinformation. That was the truth. It was just not what the government wanted to put out there for everybody to believe. And loads of people got shut down for this, and I think it's wrong. And I think the government's position on this, her answers are just totally just arrogant. Like, we can do whatever the hell we want to do. You know, like when asked, how come only conservative news outlets were the ones getting deranked and censored outright? Well, I don't have to square that. What? What do you mean you don't? That's not suspicious to you that it's only conservatives that are getting shut down, that are getting deranked and just completely banned in certain instances outright? That's not concerning? That doesn't pop up any red flags to you? No, of course not, because it's intentional. Like we said, like that lady said, there's over 300 government or entities created and funded by the government to shut and censor American voices down. And this should enrage everybody on the right and everybody on the left, because, you know, once Republicans come back into power, Republicans can do that to the left. We know they're probably not going to, but this should concern everybody, and that is the only reason I'm making a video on this. I'm trying to bring much more awareness to this, because it is totally unfair for the government to come in and nudge people in a certain direction on what to think, right? That is more like communism, which something I've been screaming about. We're in the midst of a communist revolution, and nobody really knows it, you know, except for a few certain people in media that are actually seeing what's going on and seeing the nudges toward communism. And I don't think we want communism, because we know from history that communism always ends in failure, but it starts with piles and piles and piles of dead bodies, because you can't get to that communist utopia without getting rid of the people that don't want the communism, which is pretty much anybody who owns property. Yeah, you got to get rid of property owners, because property owners aren't going to just give up their property. But this is just utter amazing that it took Republicans to get in control of the House to bring all this stuff to light. Like, what if, you know, Republicans never took control of the House? Would we even know about this information? Probably not, because Democrats are just fine with censoring you and censoring me and censoring everybody that doesn't parrot their talking points, if you will. But I think I've rambled on for long enough on this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section. Is this just not outright enraging to you? It is to me, at least. But that's all I got. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.